Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia Question Time with me, Giorgi Rukhadze.
And with me, Nodar Kharshiladze.
This question is from John. Can you explain what is actually happening within Georgian Dream?
Maybe. I mean, if Russians decide that they want Kobakhidze instead of Bidzina, why not?
There needs to be something big.
Our best case scenario for Georgia is some kind of shady neutrality.
We were definitely banging every possible door.
Yeah. I did part of that, and you did part of that. They can tolerate Aliyevs because they need more from Azerbaijan. Why they should tolerate Bidzina?
Gharibashvili, Quirikashvili, Gakharia, Gharibashvili again. The same pattern.
Why you are missing Bakhtadze? He was also a prime minister. Everybody forgets about him. I feel
Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia Question Time with me, Giorgi Rukhadze.
And with me, Nodar Kharshiladze.
This is a special edition of Talk Georgia, airing every Sunday at 10 in the evening, where Nodar and I will be answering your questions about key developments for the week, as well as wider developments for Georgian and regional politics.
Talk Georgia is brought to you by Droeba Media Group, trusted and high-quality analytical media source.
And by GSAC, a think tank offering in-depth political analysis of Georgia and the wider Black Sea region, along with academic and practical training for postgraduate students and mid-career professionals.
And now, let's go to your questions.
This question is from John, which says, can you explain what is actually happening within Georgian Dream? Is Mr. Kobakhidze emerging as a political superman, with Ivanishvili retreating into the shadows? Or is Kobakhidze being set up as the ultimate scapegoat by Ivanishvili? Floor is yours, Nodar. You are our expert on GD.
Well, it's hard to be expert on something so elusive as GD, but I would not call Mr. Kobakhidze super anything, definitely not a Superman. That will be insult to decades of the Superman's Hollywood activities. But what is obvious, and I think it manifested now in the last 2 months, that Kobakhidze has gained more power than he used to have. I mean, it's not only that he has become party chairman officially, he also had been party chairman once, but it didn't matter at that time. Now it was also manifested through the total and absolute dismissal of his political opponents. I mean, meaning that former Prime Minister Gharibashvili is gone, he's out in the cold, and it was obvious that he was made to make this statement where he did not only say that he is living Georgian Dream, he also underlined that he is going to be quitting the politics as it is. Now also Mr. Gharibashvili's team members were also quite deep-seated in Georgian Dream for a number of years, including Governor of Ajara, who was not only removed from his post, he was kicked out from the political council of Georgian Dream. So it's a very punitive actions and very obviously sending a message, first of all, to Georgian Dream that there is the new boss means business. I mean, and also, of course, appointment of the secret police. I can't call it what it is because it's a political police. That's what it is in sense of the. It's the first time since Georgian Dream came to power that head of the SUSI is not appointed by PM directly. It's always been appointed by PM. Used to be his former bodyguard or a friend of the family, he's a most trusted guy. Now, that current head, the new head actually, is the close associate and compatriot of the Mr. Kobakhidze himself. He's not directly linked to Bidzina. So one might assume that Kobakhidze got more control than any other prime minister in the GD's history. So does it make a political superman? Definitely not. Does it make him independent? One might doubt about that, but it does make him the most powerful PM after Bidzina actually resigned his primary ministership in 2013.
Maybe Kobakhidze is indeed most powerful man now in Bidzina's team.
But he's still in Bidzina's team.
But he's still in Bidzina's team. And secondly, how it will play out for him, whether it is a privilege or whether it is a burden, so I think it needs to be seen. Because, look, in a normal democratic system, things work still things work the other way around. Okay, so what happens is that first you become the party leader, which means that you are the most influential, etc., respected political figure in the party. Then you take your party to the elections. Basically, you win the elections, you form a majority, or maybe put coalition together, and then you become prime minister, which is natural, and then you become the most influential political person in the country. And this is how Ivanishvili himself started, by the way. So he put the party together, he won the elections, he became prime minister, but it only lasted for a year. And then he suddenly decided that he was too bored or busy with something else, and he said that, okay, here is the guy, Mr. Gharibashvili, you know, young and handsome and this and that, and he's going to be your prime minister, right? And this is where things went wrong in Georgian politics, well, from my perspective. But the point what I want to make is this. Okay, since then, Ivanishvili appoints prime ministers, then these people become party leaders, and then Ivanishvili gets bored with them and sacks them. So, like Gharibashvili, same story. Then Kvirikashvili, exactly. He was appointed by Bidzina, then he became party leader, and then Bidzina got bored of him, disappointed, maybe, I don't know, got sacked again. Maybe slight different ending with Gakharia, but the same story.
Rukhadze, who was also...
Right. So the point what I'm making is that, I mean, when we're talking about how favorable position Kobakhidze is, I think we need to look at the history. Okay, and Gharibashvili, Kvirikashvili, Gakharia, Gharibashvili again, the same pattern.
Why you are missing Rukhadze? He was also a prime minister. Everybody forgets about him. I feel
I don't know.
Actually, one of the most decent ones Georgian Dream had. I mean, he tried to do something. So
I have a hard time to remember all the prime ministers that Ivanishvili played us with. But my question is that, did it go well for them?
Well, no.
More Kobakhidze might be different.
It's not Kobakhidze that he's different. Times are different now. All at those times and in the period of the Kvirikashvili, definitely we had a very strong partnership with the United States. You remember the Vice President Pence came to Georgia at that time, so it marked a high point definitely in Georgian Dream's political history of relationship with Americans. I mean, not in Georgia's, because I mean Misha had there, but in Georgian Dream that was a high point. Then when Gharibashvili came back, there was some EU integration enhancement, and we remember the Chancellor Merkel's visit, and President Hollande comes here. So at that time, they are partnering with the West, and this is all part of the, let's say, neither normal nor democratic, but somehow some hybrid system, which West tolerated freely, by the way. Now it's all entrenched. Now it's a siege mentality. Now they declared war on everybody. I mean, at least war in a political sense. They claim that they put blame on the West, that they are part of some deep state and everything. And the opposition and NGOs and media, all of us, we are part of this conspiracy, and they're fighting against it to save Georgian sovereignty. So now Bidzina doesn't have that avenue of the maneuver he used to. He is very limited to very small space of the foreign policy, and he doesn't have any more partners. Americans don't trust him anymore. Europeans don't trust him anymore. So his power has diminished vis-a-vis outside of Georgia. Now inside as well, I mean, when Gakharia was a prime minister, or when the Rukhadze, which you deny his the legacy in Georgian Dream, was prime minister, I knew lots of decent people who said, you know, they're not that good, but I'm still gonna vote for them because they are lesser of the Orient. We all knew that. Now there are no such people. I mean, at least I don't know them, because everybody says that this is unbearable and we need to change. So internally as well, situation becomes highly polarized. I mean, so stakes are very high, and now it becomes increasingly difficult to make these political reshuffles for him, especially when Gharibashvili is dismissed. And I think Kobakhidze knew about it, that's why he insisted. There are no strong figures for the moment left in Georgia Dream. If Bidzina wants to replace Kobakhidze, he has only one way. He has to come back himself. And he definitely doesn't want to do that, for the moment at least. It looks like that way. So, and there is a second question. Will Kobakhidze be replaced?
Okay, yeah, this is where my question here is that do you rule out the possibility that the Kobakhidze becomes too strong to be replaced by Bidzina? Because, well, you know, power corrupts.
Let me tell you the story that there was this Russian businessman, Mr. Khodorkovsky, who was in charge of the many things in 90s Russia. Okay, he was promoting General Lebed when he was the first tour, and he was promoting also at that time unknown secretary of the FSB, Mr. Putin. Thanks to Mr. Khodorkovsky, Mr. Putin came to power. Okay? Eltsin was hesitant about him.
But basically, there we are also other business people who supported Putin.
Yeah, but Khodorkovsky was the major. Yeah, Berezovsky was the architect of everything, together with Khodorkovsky. But Berezovsky was the brain before. Khodorkovsky was the money. So two of them together organized. So Berezovsky was the head of the National Security Council at that time. In one day, Berezovsky is dismissed and he leaves Russia to London. In 2 weeks after Putin becomes a temporary president. And on the press conference next day, Putin asked by one of the journalists, what does he think about Berezovsky's departure? And Putin's answer was very stylish in this way, that he asked journalists, who is Berezovsky? You see?
You see Kobakhidze doing that, so when he's asked, so... And then says, who's Bidzina?
Yeah, there are many businesses in Russia. I don't know all of them, he said. So here is the thing that possibility, I don't believe this is going to happen, but possibility just increased. Okay, I mean, there are always, in politics you should never say never. It's a cliche, but in politics I think that is a very good rule. If there was some percentage of the chance, now there are more of those. Kobakhidze become more powerful. And let's not forget that Bidzina might not want to do it, but if there is some kind of the pressure, let's say from our northern neighbors from Russia, which Bidzina now has left himself alone towards them. I mean, West is out of the game. China is not politically interested in the region, so Bidzina is now alone with the Russians, which is very dangerous to be, especially with current Russia. Maybe, I mean, if Russians decide that they want Kobakhidze instead of Bidzina, why not? Yeah, we had a second question from somebody named, I think it's Levan, yes? Second question?
Yeah, that's right, that's Levan.
It's clear the Georgian Dream has turned away from the EU. Yeah, that is clear. And Brussels won't negotiate accessions with autocrats. I'm not sure about that. But was EU membership even truly within reach of Georgia, or has it always been a convenient illusion? Well, that's a part of, I think you are the EU expert, and it's much better than you answer it. But look, now Georgian Dream maintains that exactly that. Currently, that we would never become members. Anyway, you know, today there were declaration about United States strategic partnership, that it was just a piece of paper, nothing else. Yeah. So, now tell us about the EU.
Maybe 10 years ago, yes. 10 years ago, that was impossible. Okay? 5 years ago, that was possible, but not probable.
Yeah, highly unlikely, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Today, that's within a reach.
Why? Does Ukraine change it?
And I'll, sorry?
Does Ukraine?
Yeah, exactly, and I'll come to that. But look, the same can be exactly said about some of the other countries that got into EU. For example, in the 80s, for Poland and Czech Republic and Hungary, to become a EU member was, unthinkable. 90s, well, it became possible, and then it became probable, then likely, then almost inevitable, and in 2004 there was a big bang EU enlargement, and all of those the Visegrad and Baltic and some of the other countries ended up there. So again, that changes. Okay, things are sometimes impossible, sometimes possible, sometimes probable. The most important thing is that there needs to be something big happening to make sure that European Union turns itself into an expanding mood. For example, at that time it was collapse of Soviet Union, and the EU seized the geopolitical momentum, opportunity, and then there was an expansion, the large expansion in 2004. But by the way, two countries that did not do anything to become part of European Union were left out. That's Bulgaria and Romania. And I think if they were not lucky, they would have ended up with other Western Balkan countries and Georgia. Okay? If you look at Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the fully fledged, unprovoked invasion, that can be considered of an event of the same level as collapse of Soviet Union. In terms of European Union to realize that now enlargement policy should become their, the key policy towards the neighborhood. And this is why now for Georgia, for Ukraine, for Moldova, maybe even for Armenia, EU membership is 100% within reach. Maybe within 5 years, within 7 years, and that's very limited time for EU enlargement. But also what we have to bear in mind that, okay, the bigger the enlargement wave is, the bigger anti-enlargement waves it generates. Because, for example, if we take a look at 2004 Big Bang invasion, after 5 years, then we saw quite a lot of anti-enlargement wave coming. And, for example, Brexit, surge of these ultra-right anti-European parties, the economic crisis, blah, blah, blah. This is all was caused by that enlargement wave. And now this wave subsided. There is another geopolitical shift that was caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And in that momentum where we are now, I think that if we miss this opportunity, and we don't really have a lot of time, we have a maximum year or two to catch up with Ukraine and Moldova and some of the Western Balkan countries, to be part of another Big Bang European enlargement. Because I'm 100% sure that after that, there will be another anti-enlargement wave. If you're left behind, then it will be virtually impossible to swim into that sea when it is moving against you.
So you have a very good logic that enlargement, then fatigue, anti-enlargement, then some let's say the key event happens like 9/11 or the Russian invasion, then enlargement again, and it goes here. So we have this limited window of opportunity.
Absolutely. Very limited, I would say.
But Georgian Dream is doing everything to not get there.
So there is only one way to do it. So either Georgian people is strong enough to remove Ivanishvili and the Dream from power, or if they stay there for at least a couple of years, well, I believe from my perspective, this window of opportunity will close down. Of course, there is a chance something similar, Romania and Bulgaria, that after Big Bang enlargement, there will be certain time when you can catch up. Yeah. But again and again, I think that the things are moving faster now if you compare it what was 20 years ago, and that time where you can catch up is becoming more and more limited. Let's move to the next question, which came from Irina. And what she says is that, look, if Trump and Putin strike a deal and divide Ukraine, so what happens to Georgia? Okay, are Abkhazia and South Ossetia lost forever? And in that scenario, isn't Georgian Dream the safer bet since they are already aligned with Moscow?
Well, this is a logic of Georgian Dream, and this is unfortunately or fortunately, that's the loser's game, because one way or another, Ukraine war gonna end. I mean, it doesn't look likely that it will end as soon as Trump thought. I mean, definitely his first efforts were not that fruitful as he was promising them to be. So for the moment, with a lower intensity, maybe that is his contribution, but war continues. However, in the unlikely event, but let's say that Trump succeeds this year there will be no peace deal for the moment. There will be just ceasefire agreement, which will, as Trump looks at it, as I understood, some kind of the Korean scenario plus. Plus, he wanted Ukraine to recognize some some lost territories as Russian in exchange of Russian security guarantees, but Ukraine will never go for that. And plus, nobody believes in anything Russia says. So I think that element is removed. So if there is a Korean scenario, so it's a ceasefire on some line drawn on the map, and then we are talking about the militarized zone, and we are talking about the deploying the European Union troops as a peacekeepers, which is a realistic opportunity. So we are not part of any strategic package now United States consider. This is obvious. Georgia used to be, it used to be that Ukraine was part of the Georgian thing. Now we are part of the Ukrainian thing. If Ukraine has to settle with the territories it has without recognizing the occupation of Russia, I think we should not expect anything good on our side. However, remaining Ukraine will be heavily, let's say, integrated into European institutions. Not if NATO, which is hard prospect, but European Union is likely. And of course, lots of investment, reconstruction efforts, everything. So Ukraine will become way, way more westernized and will become integral part of Europe. Now, Georgia does not seem to have the same prospect because, first of all, nobody knows in Europe what to do with Georgia, either in Washington. I mean, what to do with current Georgia, the country which was for the last 20 years banging every door, asking, let me in. We were demanding our interests to NATO first, then to European Union. We were very stubborn. We were asking it. We were first calling Russians the occupiers. I mean, we were the troublemakers in that sense.
Yeah, I remember. So that we were definitely banging every possible door.
Yeah. I did part of that, and you did part of that. I mean, we all in our own dimensions. I mean, every meeting I would say, we want. First, it was a NATO. I mean, hardcore, and then it, of course, because you was very distant at that time. But now this country suddenly be willingly and willfully, it's kind of the back door of the Russia. It is likely that nobody would include us in any trade-offs with Russia. Nobody would like to spend political capital for a case which does not want to even declare itself as a case. If Georgia doesn't want to free itself of Russian influence, why Americans or Europeans should spend political capital to do so? I mean,
yeah, the logical, absolutely.
And under this government, that looks that way. Under this government, unfortunately, looks like that our best case scenario for Georgia is some kind of neutrality, shady neutrality, but under indirect control of Moscow, of course, so with the links with the mafia and Russian business groups and everything. So we will not end up in a good place, okay?
No.
And making it good with Russians gives you nothing because many tried, none succeeded, okay? I mean, there are a number of examples. Even Belarus, who is ethnically and politically so integrated with Russians, they don't want to be part of the Russia. Lukashenko is doing everything possible to maintain his independence. And look at Armenia, very good case for us. I mean, our relatives and brothers in Caucasus, they are very unhappy with Russians now because Russians did literally nothing to stop them, despite of their treaty-bound obligations. And Azeris managed to take what internationally recognized as a part of the Nagorno-Karabakh. So ask Armenians. They stopped. I mean, Armenians are slowly stopping their formats. They froze their in CSTO. They are talking about more approachment with Europe. So why would we now want to be closer with Russia when other their traditional allies are trying to skip the ship?
Absolutely. And I think that this is fundamentally wrong if anybody thinks that the closer you are to Russia, the safer you are.
Yeah, that's quite contrary.
That's absolutely the other way around.
Yeah.
And look, for example, what Georgian Dream is doing, well, of course, it's clearly they are aligned with Russia. But because they are aligned with Russia, this is a lot more dangerous. And because of this, the likelihood of losing Abkhazia and South Ossetia forever is increasing. Because look, so closer you are with the Russia, you are more distant from your Western partners.
Yep.
So you are limiting your contacts with with the democratic world. There is almost no leverage that anybody will help you if Russia decides anything. And then, okay, you to give me one or any reason why Russia would stop annexing Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Why?
Let's move to next question. What are the chances of Georgian Dream could manage a relationship with the EU, with the US, the way Azerbaijan does, where Ivanishvili maintains a dictatorship, yet the US continues to use Georgia as a trust? But it's a simple example of the Azerbaijan. Can Georgia become another Azerbaijan? So, EU's dealings with Azerbaijan. I mean, especially now Italians are working with them. Americans dealing. So, do you think that is it possible that Georgia becomes another Azerbaijan of the region, and the West starts just to deal with us on the, pragmatic business issues, which I think Georgian Dream, that's what they want for the moment as it looks. But do you think that's possible from the Western side?
Well, I don't think it is possible. And I'll try to explain why. Okay, let's take a look at the history, for example, because indeed there is some similarities between Azerbaijan and Georgia. We both were part of Soviet Union. Soviet Union collapsed, and then we became independent.
We both had the civil wars.
Yeah, we both had civil wars. We both had territories lost for some time. Yeah, indeed, there are similarities, but there are also significant differences. And the key difference is that when Soviet Union collapsed and Azerbaijan became an independent state, Aliyev family took over. Almost right away. There was
the civil war. 1 year.
1 year, I think. And then Aliyev family took over, and then they established, in fact, a dynasty in the country. So Azerbaijan doesn't have any history of democracy or, the change of power by election or by peaceful revolution, anything. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, don't forget that Azerbaijan is oil and gas-rich nation, which is indeed very important for the European Union, for the United States. Okay, and United States does not expect Azerbaijan to become a democracy. And the oil and gas are too important to leave Azerbaijan behind because of, Azerbaijan is not a democracy, right? But when you take a look at Georgia, Georgia has absolutely different history of emerging as a state, and we had change of peaceful transfer of power as a result of Velvet Revolution. Then we had a case when the government was changed by elections. Georgia is not oil-rich nation, but not gas-rich nation. There is no kind of natural resources in Georgia. Yeah, indeed, Georgia is an important transport hub and also the energy corridor, but the corridor is not as important as the source of the energy, right? So, and most importantly, United States became a strategic partner of Georgia, which is no longer the case, sadly, and I hope that it will come back one day, not because Georgia's strategic importance, but because of Georgia emerged as a democratic leader in the region. So he was a leader of democracy and leader of reforms, etc., etc. And through Georgia, democracy could have been disseminated in the region. So again, the key reason why US and the West partners Georgia is fundamentally different why, again, the same West partners Azerbaijan. This is why I believe that in long run or in perspective, this is not possible.
Now here is that don't forget that West, especially the United States, has invested billions of dollars in the Georgia. So now because Bidzina doesn't want them here anymore, they wouldn't say, oops, my bad, and just retreat and declare it all a sunk cost, and then starting to change your shapes from the democracy. You were part of the Western agenda. We demanded it since President Kharshiladze, so we were including it. Yes, we were the second league first and everything, but then gradually becoming more and more known to the West, yes, and now we want to go back. I mean, Azerbaijan never wanted to be a part of the Western agenda. Then the only thing they briefly decided, they briefly discussed their NATO membership, but they never even made a statement. And even that EU is out of the question for them. But as you rightfully said, you can tolerate Azerbaijan because there are lots of things they need from Azerbaijan. They can tolerate Aliyevs because they need more from Azerbaijan. Why they should tolerate Bidzina? I mean, what's the rationale between it? I mean, this is another corrupt dictator like Plakhatnyuk was in Moldova. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, but Georgian Dream will continue to damage that. That's the problem, by trying to isolate us and forcing West to abandon us to a point of being, with all due respect to our neighbors, another Azerbaijan. That is, I think, reality for the moment. Unfortunate, but reality.
Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, if you've got questions, as I told you beforehand, you can send them to talkgeorgia1@gmail.com. We'll see you next Sunday.
Yes, thank you very much for your attention. Again, if you have any questions about analytics, send them to us. If you have any troubles, go to psychologists. If you have any questions about existence, visit the church. So see you next week.
And on the next show, two men with shaved head and goatee beard is going to answer your questions.
Yes.